let's go ahead and get to tonight's message, which is a story we're all familiar with, but let's break it down a little bit. This is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, keep in mind, I know everybody likes Sodom and Gomorrah, the worst people in the world, the worst things in the world. Remember, Jesus said it'd be better for Sodom and Gomorrah than some of the people he talked to. So, what's the worst thing you can do is reject who? Jesus. Reject Christ, right? Reject his gospel. But we see here in this story, really a man and a family unwilling to let go of the world. They've gotten comfortable in it. How easy is it to get comfortable in the world? Very. Especially when you start making some progress and things are going your way and they like you and you like them. It's really easy to kind of slide into that. That's what we're going to see tonight. But we are going to back up a little bit first. Remember what we looked at last week. Well, we'll go to Genesis chapter 18. Now let's remember that when God, the Lord, came down with two angels, he met with Abraham, and Sarah was in the tent. He really had two purposes for coming down, didn't he? One was to make sure Sarah and Abraham knew that the next year that they would have a son of promise. It would be Isaac. There's laughter, right? So it was in part that, but also it was to send the two angels down into Sodom and Gomorrah to look around and see if it is as bad as the word has come up to God. And so as they're heading that way, the Lord kind of asked that question, should I keep this from Abraham? Abraham is the father of nations. You know, he's kind of important. He's a friend of God. Should we keep this from him? Especially since who lives there? Lot. His blood, right, lives there. Should we keep this from him? And he decided not to. And then Abraham, does he react with hate towards those people? Did he act with judgment towards those people? Did he act with arrogance? I'm so much better than them. They deserve it. No, none of that, right? Now, was he familiar with them? Yes.
He didn't excuse them either.
No, didn't excuse them and say, oh, they're nice people, you all let them go. He says, if there's any righteous, right? If there's 50, he started at 50, right? You think in a town that size, you can get 50 righteous people, right? Then you start thinking, well, maybe 45, maybe 40, how about 30, how about 20, how about what? 10. In fact, let's pick up that story right there. Let's start in verse 30 of chapter 18. And he said unto him, this is Abraham talking to the Lord, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there be 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it for if I find 30, right? So again, is God anxious here? No. Is God like, I just want to kill them all? No. You know, he's always patient, isn't he? He's always merciful, but he's also holy, right? And he will judge if he needs to. Verse 31, and he said, behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy for 20's sake. And then finally, 32, Abraham said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 should be found there. And the Lord said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. Okay. So he goes back to Mamre over there, and the Lord goes away, and the two angels keep going. They'd already left them. They already headed it down that way. And they keep going, and they come to the town. So we see there, we need to let go of this idea that somehow we're judge and jury, right? Leave it up to God, and God desires mercy and God's grace, and we should also impart that, right? We should not desire the destruction of anybody, right? But show some mercy. Now, we come to the story of Lot. Now, Lot's sitting down there, and where is Lot as the angels come into town? This is very important for us to understand, because in chapter 19, verse 1, we pick it up there. Genesis chapter 19, verse 1. And there came two angels to Sodom at evening, right? And Lot sat where? In the gate of Sodom. Now, that's an important thing. Back there in the culture of the time, who sat in the gate? Leaders. The leaders sat in the gate. It wasn't like he was just passing by and he happened to see two strangers come by. He was actually, it says, sitting in the gate. He was a man of prominence. We know he had great wealth. Usually that's what got you there. Was their society really any different than ours? No. But he was a man of prominence in the city, and he had grown obviously very what? Comfortable in the city. Them comfortable with him to a certain extent, and him comfortable with them to a certain extent, right? And how easy is it for us to kind of get into that rut, right? And he'd gotten to the point where he was one of those that sat in the gate. They sit in the gate. And that was very important because when people came, when visitors came, they would talk first to who? The people who sat in the gate. They want to know things. They would get guidance. The guys will sit there and they would just talk all day about things. Just yak about weighty things of the city and policies and politics and religion and things that you sit in the gate and people would come and they'd ask them questions. This is a very prominent position that he's in. He is comfortable there. He has a good position there, doesn't he? Now, does he know what's going on in that city?
Oh, yeah.
Very much so. But he himself has gotten to a good point, hasn't he? And he sees these two guys come along. So he sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. Now, this is probably just a normal, pretty greeting. I don't know if he knows specifically that they're in. He knows they're important, though, right? So he gives them respect. And in verse 2, and Lot said, behold now, my lords, little l, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the street all night. We don't want to put you out. We'll just sack out here in the square, right? Again, does Lot know what these people are like? Does he know the sin that is going on around him? While he has gotten kind of comfortable, he still knows the sin, right? Is he okay with their sin? No, he's not okay with their sin. And he doesn't want to see these two hurt. Verse 3, and he pressed upon them greatly, urging them, begging them, do not do that. And they turned in unto him and entered into his house, and he made them a feast and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. So he knows what would happen to them if they just stayed out there at night, because he knew what kind of people these were. So even though he knew, did he condone their sin? No. Did he want to see this happen? No. But he was also what? Comfortable. He's prominent. He gets to sit in the gate, so everything's okay. And sometimes we get that position, don't we? We look at the world and say, oh, so sinful. All those things going on, but it's made a pretty good life for me. I don't participate in those kinds of things, but they've given me quite a bit. They've allowed me to have a lot of luxuries and things like that, so I'm not going to sit here and rabble-rouse, but I'm going to not be okay with it. Is that where God wants us to be? No. Verse 4. But before they lay down, going to sleep at night after having a nice big meal together, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. That's a lot of alls and everys. Now, does that really mean every single kid? We assume this is men. We assume it is from young men of certain age up to the very old, but they all came, didn't they? There's also a question whether, the big question is whether the sons-in-law, quote unquote, would have been part of this group, or whether some others were. But certainly all the ones of the city came and compassed the house all around. How many find this a little scary? Yeah. And did Lot know why they were there? Absolutely, he knew. This is what he was afraid of. This is why he didn't want them staying in the streets. He knew what these people were like. Verse 5. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them unto us that we may know them. And we all know what know means. Not get to know them, find out where they're from, their dad, their occupation. And this is sad that it's gotten to this point. This city has gotten to this now. Back up a little here. Because everybody agrees that this homosexuality, this sinful nature, this kind of is completely wrong.
Absolutely.
But we also must remember, when did it start going wrong? They didn't start here. Every society starts with something, doesn't it? And you start over here with sex outside of marriage and pornography and promiscuity and those kinds of things, and treatment of women, ill treatment of women, and then you start going, and then it ends up where? Here. How long has Lot been there? It's been there for years and years and years, and all the time he's getting a more prominent position, accepted by them to where he's one of the elders of the city. And meanwhile, what has he seen been going on there? Again, it didn't start here. This is where they've come, right? And when do the people of God need to stand up and say, I'm not comfortable with that? More than that, this is sinful. More than that, I'm not going to participate in that. More than that, you should not participate in that. When's it got to be? Back here. And we have to keep that in mind, right? Because we get accustomed to it, don't we? That's okay. This is okay. That's all right. This is okay. That's not so bad. And where does it end up? It ends up sinner, more sinful, more sinful, more sinful, more sinful. And then we stand up and say, aha, how horrible this is. When did it start? And that's where Lot is right now. He knows it's gotten that bad. And what has he said so far?
Apparently nothing, because they came and thought he'd give them to them.
Yeah, they came to get him, right? Plus, he was an elder of the city. If he was this whole time saying you shouldn't be living this way, you shouldn't be this attitude, you shouldn't be treating women that way, you shouldn't be doing this way, you shouldn't be doing that way. In fact, we're going to see in a minute where his head is. So they come and say, hey, Lot, go ahead and send those two guys out that we may know them. Verse 6, and Lot went out at the door unto them and shut the door after him. You got to give him guts, all right? A whole bunch of guys in the city all surrounding you, and he's going to go up and tell them no, right? And said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Now he's saying it, right? Has he been saying it since then, before this? I mean, that's the question, right? How has he been so accepted if he's been saying this all along? You shouldn't do this wickedly. In fact, the next verse is the most disturbing part of this story.
Yeah.
So how far has Lot himself gotten? How much has he slid? How much has he accepted that this is okay? Verse 8, behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do you to them as is good in your eyes. Let's read that again. And do you to them as good in your eyes? At the same time, he's detaching himself, right? At the same time, doing what? Allowing it. You do what's right in your eye, I would say it's wrong. But how about you do that instead of this terrible thing? You can't just substitute one sin for another, can you? But when we start doing that, that's how the world gets into our lives, doesn't it? Slowly but surely, we start accepting this sin, but not that sin. This sin, but not that sin. Oh, that's a horrible sin, but this sin, When God's looking down, and what is he saying about all of them? That's the world. That's the lust of the flesh. That's the desires of the eyes. It's the pride of life. It's all sin. It's all of the world. And he's gotten to the point where he's not saying it's good, but if you want to do that, fine, but don't do this one.
He even offered both of them,
Both of them, yeah.
not just one.
Yep. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And he almost comes back to, you know what? I have a personal responsibility to protect these two. But my daughters, it's like, I'm the daughter, I'm like, don't you have a responsibility to protect me too? Come on now. But that's, again, what worldly mindset has gotten into their head? A worldly mindset that's been going for hundreds and hundreds of years, and by the way, still goes today, right? And this has gotten in, and he's basically gotten into that worldly mindset, even though he won't go as far as, okay, take these two guys. Okay, now, that's an awful proposal, isn't it? How deep has Lot gotten into the world? He's accepted in that society. They know he's a little different because he won't participate in all of it. But still, he's become accepted, but he's got to put his foot down here. But you don't put your foot down just there. You don't just put your foot down in some sense. It's got to be all of them, doesn't it? And in fact, what was the response of these men? Verse 9. And they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow, this Lot fellow, came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge? He thinks he can judge us, this foreigner? This guy has no part of us. Now will we deal worse with you than with them? But now they're going to attack Lot. And that's what's always going to happen. We may get comfortable. We may move up within the world. We may go through the world, and they'll be accepting of us until else. I mean, anybody else care about him? He was just like that family, right? Verse 14. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law. Now, there's a tremendous amount of debate over who these guys were. A couple of points, same kind of word. So it could be they were two men who were engaged to his daughter.
I think the ESV reads
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
that they were to marry his daughter.
Were to marry.
Yeah.
So they would still be considered sons-in-law because the agreement has been made, but they just haven't been actually married yet. And as he said, and here's the big question, are those two daughters that they're espoused to living with them, or are they the two daughters that were in the house?
Well, it's probably the ones in the house then, because
Could be. Yeah.
probably.
So it could be those two daughters, which, yeah, at least we see some morality there, right? They haven't known a man. They've been engaged to them. They haven't done those things. There's a big question for you. Were those two guys at the house?
No.
Says all the men of the city came, young to old. So were they there too? Were they just there to tag along? You know, it's just, everybody comes, what they do. You know, I mean, this is sad, isn't it? There were these two guys in the city who were, he was willing to let his daughters marry them. Yeah. In this kind of city, in this kind of atmosphere. Again, bringing them together, right? Accepting it. But they love each other. No, I don't. But I love him, Daddy. All right. Which married his daughters and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his son-in-law. It seemed like a crazy man, right? Destroy the city. What did we ever do? Again, that's the way the world looks at it, right? The way the world looks at it, if anybody says they're wicked, they say what? You're wicked. You're wrong. You're just a judge. You're just a hypocrite. You're just a this, right? And then when you say you're going to be destroyed for it, they say what? Us? That's crazy talk. We're no worse than who? I'll name somebody, right? No worse than them. No worse than, I see Sodom sitting there. We're no worse than Gomorrah. And Gomorrah saying what? We're no worse than Sodom, right? And they probably weren't. But it's a problem, right? So the sons-in-law did not come. So what happened? Verse 15. And this is ever read something like 19,000 times in your life, and then all of a sudden you actually read it, you go, whoa, that's weird. Verse 15. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters which are here. So some read that as, well, there might be two daughters elsewhere. So two daughters that are with their engaged husbands, and then two daughters are here, so it's four daughters. Some say no, just noting that the two daughters that are here with you, let's just take them, right? Take all the people with you. This is one of those, let's ask in heaven. All right? Lest thou be consumed the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered.
He just slept. He just been told it was destroyed too, and they had to wake him up and tell him to leave again.
Yeah, just who would linger after that night before, learning that the entire city is going to be destroyed? He ran to tell his sons-in-law, we need to get out of town. They mocked him and said no. He went back to sleep. In the morning, he's like, let's pack. What do you want to take? Let's take some photographs, some videotapes. No. What are you packing? What are you worried about? And I always like the fact it doesn't say his wife lingered. It doesn't say his daughters lingered. It says what? He lingered. Figure out what to take, what not to take. What am I going to do? What am I going to do here? When an angel comes and says, get out of the city because it's going to be destroyed, what should your first action be? Run. In fact, the New Testament says that, doesn't it? If you're on the rooftop, don't go down into the house. Just go, right? When God says he's going to destroy something, he's serious. Just what? Go, but he lingered. Why did he linger? Because he's still holding on to what?
The world.
The world. Still holding on to those stuff. Still thinking about his things, right? I was picturing him kind of wandering around the house. Oh, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss that. Oh, last time I'll ever see my kitchen. I just had it remodeled. You know? That's the way we think about things, though, right? If your house was on fire, would you linger?
Sure.
We know who's going down. Our department says, don't do that. They'll take care of it. And while he lingered, the angels laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of the two daughters. Good thing they had two angels. 4 hands, right? God knew what he was doing. He knew it before. And they had to pull them out of the city. And the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. So dragged them out of the city. Now, how extensive is this whole brimstone shower going to be? It is going to take up the entire valley. Every city. It's not just Sodom and Gomorrah. It is every city in that valley that is going to be destroyed by this brimstone shower. Well, it's still on the list for now. It's still on the list for now until this happened. Verse 17, and it came to pass, verse 17, that when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, escape for thy life, look not behind you, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. I'm wiping this whole place out. Every animal, woman, child, man, everything is going to be destroyed. Get out of the valley, get up to the mountains. And Lot said, can I stay? That sounds uncomfortable. What is he still holding on to? Still holding on to the world. I like having a roof. I like having other people around. I like a well that I get water from. I like to be able to buy stuff and have a bed and clothes and things like that. I don't want to go live up in the mountains with my little family, cooking over a fire, trying to find shelter and beating on bears. I don't. I like my life. And again, he's not willing to what? Let go. A life that God is going to do what with? Destroy. And he's still thinking about, but I still want a piece of this world. I can't have my home. I still want a home. Right? That's why he says this, verse 18. Lot said unto them, oh, not so, my Lord. Like, oh, no way. Now, let's give him a little credit. He's kind of an older guy. So, I don't know about sleeping on the ground somewhere, but still, yeah, it's like, oh, no, that will not do. And again, if God says he's going to destroy something and tells you to go someplace, what should you do? Go immediately, right? Go where it's safe. But he decides to try to bargain. Verse 19. Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy. Thanks for coming and rescuing me. Get me out of the city. You've been more than great, full of grace and mercy. I'm wonderful. Thank you, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain lest some evil take me and I die. But I can't go there. I can't live that way. Something bad will happen up there and I'm going to die. Again, who's he not trusting?
God.
God says goes there. Will he take care of him there?
You could probably go back to Abraham.
Yeah. A lot of places you can go.
Yeah, if that was going to be his fate, why wouldn't God just let him die in judgment on?
Yeah. That's right, yeah.
He's saving him to.
He's not going to save him just to kill him up in the mountains,
Yeah.
right. So he decides his own plan, which, by the way, never a good plan. Verse 20. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Let me go there. Is it not a little one? It doesn't have many people. You will only be saving a small number of people. I know all these people are bad. It's a small one. A little bit of grace here. And my soul shall live. I always like the way he says my soul shall live. I can be happy there. I can have joy there. Because again, what is he still holding on to? Where can he find this joy? It's with people. It's with these people, right? It's this life, this world. I got to hold on to it. I need this world. He's not letting go. The angel said, verse 21, unto him, see, I have accepted thee concerning this also, and I will not overthrow this city for which thou hast spoken. Okay? Yeah, go to that one. I won't destroy that one. Which would be the people of that city are like, have no idea what's going on. You have no idea that you're about to be destroyed and that somebody just saved all their lives. Verse 22, haste thee. Again, he's saying what? Go fast. We've been took, there's brimstone. I mean, sort of Damocles, nothing. This is brimstone from God is coming down, and you're sitting here arguing with me about where you go, making deals to go here. Get out of here. All this is happening right outside the city of Sodom. Just barely got him out of the city. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. Means little. Little city. I don't know how big it was, but kind of interesting to find out, huh? That little city said, I won't do anything until you get there, but get there. Don't linger, don't meander, and do not, what did he tell them earlier? Do not look back. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. So this was early in the morning, and by the afternoon they were finally in the city of Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone of fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and don't forget the next part, and all the plain. Except for what? Except for Zoar. And all the inhabitants of the city, and that which grew upon the ground. So just wiped out everything. Scorched earth. But who still looked back?
His wifey.
But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. After all of that, had to be dragged out of the city, had to grab her arm too, grab her out of the city, had to get her to the city, and got all of their daughters in front, and here comes Lot, and there's his wife right behind him, and they get through the gate. As soon as Lot's through the gate, fire and brimstone come down, and she turns around. Now, let's be honest. If fire and brimstone were going on behind you, how many would look? What just happened there? But really, why do you want to look back? Because I don't want you yearning for it. I don't want you longing for it. I don't want you thinking about it. I want you to turn from this world. Because what has that world gotten them? Comfort, yeah. Position, yeah. But also had led them just to accept sin, right? Little by little, oh, we're not as bad as them. That's not the standard we should desire. I'm not as sinful as them. No, God wants us to be holy as He is what? Holy, right? But they wouldn't let go of the world. And she turned into a pillar of salt. Now here's the interesting thing. Verse 27. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. So remember, he went back to Mamre, right? Under the palms over there. But he knew what God was doing, didn't he? So he went up, and from Mamre, he followed that path that he had talked with the Lord, the two angels, and he stood where he had talked to the Lord last about saving if there's at least 10, right? And he stood there looking. From there, he could see the valley. He could see the valley of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he wanted to see what was going to happen. What was he praying for? Given last week, what was he hoping for? I hope they found 10. Wouldn't that be great? See, it's the difference between Jonah and Abraham. Jonah sat there looking over the sun and hoping what? I hope God's not merciful. I hope it comes down. I hope they're all destroyed. Everything. Come on, Lord. Don't be merciful. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to their actions of repentance and things like that. Kill them all. Whereas Abraham's sitting there looking over saying what? I hope they found 10. Probably a little bit. I hope lots of good. And to that, the answer is barely. 3 made it. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, verse 28. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And he saw it just destroyed. And that'd be a little discouraging, wouldn't it? You couldn't find 10? What are you going to do? Verse 29, it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. That's an interesting little verse, because it doesn't have much to do with the story. It's just a reminder. Sometimes when we are saved, we get a little arrogant and say, save me because I'm so important. Save me because I did the right thing. Save me because I'm such a good person. No. Why was Lot saved?
For Abraham.
For Abraham's sake. And some of us are saved because somebody else prayed. Somebody else made good decisions. Somebody else was blessed by God. So even when we get God's blessing and grace, let's remember it's not for us. Right?
Well, that's actually a really beautiful point in light of the story too, because I think Abraham's prayer is one that God receives and responds to positively, because it's God's heart that I can do so much with just the smallest remnant. And that picture of how Abraham kind of had this collateral blessing is a portrait of that.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Like Abraham's being blessed by God did so much good for even Lot and his family. And so if there had been even someone like Abraham in the city of Sodom with faith, who was righteous, God could have used that, but it was lost.
It was lost. And it's also a good picture of all of us, isn't it? Yeah. Why are we saved? Yeah, because of Christ, right? Because of his righteousness, because of him. We are blessed because of him. And you get a picture of that here. Lot was saved, even though he didn't deserve it, even fought it a little bit, and still tried to hold on to the world. He was saved because of Abraham. And we, even though we sometimes hold on and want a little bit of the world too, and certainly don't deserve it, because of Christ, we are saved, right? So the descendant of Abraham saves us too, right? And we gotta remember that. So, and then of course, I love verse 30. Because what did Lot say to the angel? I can't go to the mountains. I need to go to Zoar. And a funny thing happened, when God destroys the rest of the valley, the people of Zoar were not so interested in having Lot there. And Lot maybe wasn't so interested in being around these people anymore. So what happened? Verse 30. And Lot went up out of Zoar. He did leave. And dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. So he still ended up in the same. That's the funny thing about us. We hang on to the world so much. God says, I know where you need to be. Where did they need to be?
Mountain.
I need to be in the mountains. That's where I'm going to take you. And we sit there and hold on to the world, and where do we end up still? The cave. Right? And by the way, I always wonder if they'd gone to the mountains, would his wife have even been able to turn back? I don't know. It wouldn't have been in the plains anymore, so it would have been just a different perspective. So I don't know. But go where you're supposed to go. Do it immediately, right? And not holding on to the things of the world. So that's the bottom line of this story, is we have Lot as a bad example of one who was very comfortable with the world. He was an elder in the world. He was accepted in the world. He had favor in the world. He did not accept what they were doing, did not like what they were doing, but, some was good, some was bad, right? And he was even willing to give his 2 daughters to show how far he has gone into that mindset of the world. Because does the world influence us the more we hang around with it? Yeah, absolutely. But even though he lingered, even though he argued, even though he asked this and that and the other thing, did God still save him? For Abraham's sake. Right? So let's be thankful that God is merciful and full of grace. Because even though we try to hold on, he will still save us for Christ's sake. Right? All right. Now, next week, we get to see two really bad decisions. Reminding us once again, don't hang on to the world's ideas and the way the world does it. Abraham's going to make the same mistake he made earlier, and Lot's daughters are going to do something really stupid. So we'll find out what happens next week on. All right. Any questions about the story?
So God had planned to destroy everything, including Zoar.
Mhm.
But he didn't repent. He just let.
For Lot's sake.
And
For Abraham's sake.
just because it was a small evil section now, as opposed to all of Sodom and Gomorrah, God's still righteous. So I'm just. And then they grew up, through their generations, etc., and still permeated the world with sin and this junk that's happening today.
Yep. Yeah, it's not just that junk. It's all the junk. It's the worldly ways. It's the worldly mindset.
Right.
All of that. I mean, it's just. In fact, that area. I mean, Zoar and Zoroastrianism and all those kinds of things are awfully close. And there are some on the internet that will say there's a lot related to that, but I don't know. so when we try to make deals to make our life more comfortable in this world, can we have some unintended consequences? Yes. We don't know what those people then did, right?
But to your question, if Zoar also has been destroyed, you still have Lot's daughters. They're going to mess up and they will continue.
Yeah. They're going to mess up, and there are plenty of other Canaanites who will also on that path. That again, Israelites later are supposed to destroy them all, and do they?
Right.
No, they don't destroy them, and that leads to what? More problems. And it's all about just hanging on to the things of this world. The harder we hang on to them, the more we want to be accepted by them, so we can hang on to them, the worse off everybody is.
I'm kind of puzzled by letter of 2 Peter, where in chapter 2, verse 7 or verse 8, Peter characterizes Lot much more favorably than the story seems to. That it's kind of narrating, or giving insight into the mind and heart of Lot, that he was really tormented over the lawless deeds of the people the whole time he was in the city. You certainly don't see that in
You do and you don't.
Genesis.
See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think because he knew that it was wicked, he knew it was bad, and he saw, his daughters going that way with them. I think, probably tore him apart. But at the same time, I'm older here.
Yeah.
My property's here. My wife's happy here. We're comfortable here. And that's the problem. So just saying, and I think that's Peter's point, tore him up, but what did he do about it? He still found comfort in the ways of the world, didn't he? And can we do the same thing? We're looking at, it's so terrible, but boy, I got it comfortable. Don't want to rock any boats about this, right? And that becomes the problem. We need to stand up, right?
That's the same reason a lot of people will not leave bad churches.
Oh, yeah. Or bad religion, for that matter. They know it's not doing anything, but they're comfortable there.
Other people have not touched up the.
So it's hard to leave friends sometimes.
At all.
You lead them down the wrong path, but hey, they're the friends I've got, right?